Hi, I'm Mary Greendale, and welcome to another edition of Just Thinking. We're going to talk about town government. Folks can take out nomination papers to run for local offices. The election's in May, but the papers are available as of now. Maybe you've thought about running for town office at some point. There's been a groundswell across the country in local and state offices. I'm hoping that we'll see that same kind of groundswell here in Holliston. So tonight we're going to talk about how town government's structured, and then we're going to talk to my two guests, Sam Tyler and Bill Mayer. And first, I'm going to let you gentlemen introduce yourselves and why, how much you know about government. Sam?
Okay, I'm Sam Tyler. Professionally, I'm the president of the Boston Municipal Research Bureau, which is an organization that really focuses on City of Boston fiscal management, operational issues, as well as education development, and I've been doing that for 46 years. I've also served as a member of the Finance Committee of this town. I have chaired two government study committees that have made, I think, important changes in the government structure. I think there's due for another one. And I have chaired a committee dealing with management at the school department many years ago.
And community preservation, too.
And I was chair of the Community Preservation Committee for the first 11 years.
All right, and Bill?
Thank you. Bill Mayer. I've been a resident here since 1984. I initially served a term on the school committee. I served as its chairman for a couple of years. Then following the untimely passing of Mark Lippitz, I ran for a seat on the Board of Selectmen, and I served on the Board of Selectmen for a year. For a term, I served on the school building committee for that project, and then I served as Holliston's town council for about 16 or 17 years and attended 2 town meetings per year, saw a lot of members of the Board of Selectmen come and go. I studied municipal law in law school and have an interest in municipal government, and hope to share with you tonight my thoughts on town government and recruiting candidates and what I've seen as strengths and weaknesses in people that have come on board.
Great, perfect. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a little building blocks exercise here. And I want to explain that Holliston has a very horizontal government. The Board of Selectmen really are on par with all of these other elected boards, the Finance Committee, the Planning Board, the Board of Assessors, whoever this is, Keefe Tech, Housing Authority, Parks, Schools, Library, and the Board of Health. All of them are equal in terms of how they get to be where they are. They're elected by townspeople. And so this board cannot tell those other departments, I guess we'll call them for the moment, those other departments, those boards, those commissions, what they have to do, what their priorities are, how they're going to function, or anything else like that. So they're all on a par. Now, the administrator is an administrator. He works for the selectmen. It's been a he so far. Someday maybe it'll be a she. And he has some specific positions that he oversees, like the building inspector and so forth, but I'm not going to get into that. And then the Board of Selectmen do have a litany of committees and commissions that are appointed where you can volunteer to be on the Historical Commission, you could be on the Youth and Family Services. I mean, there are like another 20, 25, maybe even more committees that report or are appointed by them and report to them. But in terms of the actual structure of government, it's very horizontal, and we're the ones who decide who these people are. And right now, as I said, nomination papers are available for anybody interested in running for town office. There's 1 selectman up. There are 3 vacancies on the Finance Committee and 1 on the Planning Board. And for the most part, we're going to start talking about those folks. Don't ask me why I picked those, but obviously finance is a biggie just because it's budget time. This is the time when they go through budgets, even for all of those 30 little committees, you know, the golf course committee and all the rest of them. They all have budgets, and they go through a very laborious process. You've been on the Finance Committee, yeah. I remember those days.
Okay. Proposition 2.5 days.
Yeah, those were, well, anyway. So, one of the things that I hear people say about, in fact, I had someone say it to me just last week, I don't think I know enough to be a selectman or whatever. You know, what do you need for education or what skills do you need and that kind of thing. And when I ran, the funny thing is I just didn't even think about that. It was like, sure, what do I know? I did have the advantage that I worked in and around government elsewhere, so you know, it wasn't that much of a long shot. But still, I realized from watching the community at that time, you're talking about volunteers, so it's not like you're filling out a job application with a resume that you have to attach, you know, your whole life story to. But anyway, so what's it take to be on the Board of Selectmen? Let's start with you, Bill, since you were.
I don't think there are any legal prerequisites, Mary, other than being a registered voter in town.
Yep.
And so Holliston and other communities have from time to time have had individuals who have run for the Board of Selectmen successfully without any record of prior service in municipal government. And some of them have been successful. Others have been one-issue candidates, have been motivated to run because they're upset about one particular matter that took place. What I think that the ideal circumstance is that we have individuals advance to the Board of Selectmen, having established some record of public service with one or more of these departments that you have before us. I personally think that training on the Finance Committee is very important. To become a selectman, you don't have to have an understanding of municipal finance, open meeting law, conflict of interest, etc., but a significant portion of the selectman's responsibility is overseeing how town dollars are spent. Town meeting appropriates the money, but it's usually done on the basis of recommendations from the Board of Selectmen from the FinCom. So I would like to see individuals who advance to the Board of Selectmen who have paid their dues a little bit and have spent time either on the FinCom or on the Planning Board, on the school committee, and become familiar with the budgetary process, with town meeting process, and get a feel for what the Board of Selectmen's responsibilities are.
Sam?
I would agree. I mean, I think that Board of Selectmen, it's really a very significant responsibility. I mean, you're one of 3 members, and you're dealing with extremely important issues all the way down to, you know, dog issues. And so you really need to be prepared. And I don't think it's a job for somebody who hasn't been involved with government in one way or another. I would agree with Bill that, you know, the Finance Committee is the best training for that. But just being involved with government and understanding how it works in Holliston really should be a prerequisite for the executive board of the town, which is the Board of Selectmen. And having also, you know, the willingness to devote the time to the job. It's along with the school committee, finance committee, and Board of Selectmen. I mean, they're very time-consuming responsibilities, but at the same time very rewarding because you are seeing that you're making a difference in the town. And, you know, that gets verified at town meeting that actually approves what's recommended. But on the day-to-day operations, I mean, the Board of Selectmen really have responsibility, but they fortunately have, you know, a town administrator, so it's not like they have to be involved all the time, but they need a town administrator that they depend on and they really can provide the expertise that's helpful, but they have all these boards and commissions. But it is one that is demanding and does require prior experience, in my view.
Well, I'm going to be the odd person out there, but why not? I don't know. I think you need to be familiar with how the town is structured. I think you need to understand the role of town meeting and the rest of these boards and so forth and have a familiarity with that. And I think you need to understand that you're not the king. You're not being benighted when you become a selectman or whatever other office, you know, that you are part of a whole team of people that have to make this work. And it's been my experience anyway that, you know, common sense and the willingness to really work hard. I have to admit the first year you're really going to hoof it, especially if you don't have any prior experience. You're really going to have to invest a whole lot of time. But I think if you have common sense, if you're willing to do a lot of reading, if you're really willing to go and research and investigate, talk to other people and so forth, and maybe just shut up the first year and listen and see where things go. I don't think you have to have served on one of the other committees. I understand the benefit of that, but there aren't too many that seem to be willing to move after they've been on the Finance Committee. Most people are pretty burned out. You know, it's a tough,
It is.
it's not the whole year, but I mean, when it's in, it's intense, you know? And I don't know, I can't think of anybody that, well, I guess there was one person who was on planning and ran for selectman, didn't win, but, you know, they don't seem to move around very much.
Right.
Once they're on one board. They either stay there or they leave, period.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's preferable to have prior experience, but not required.
Right.
And so if somebody is committed and willing to put in the time and does have common sense and some good experience in terms of their own profession.
Their own profession. Sometimes management experience.
Yeah.
It could be management experience. It might, who knows? Could be any number of things. But still, I think that it's possible to do that. And I don't think people should be scared away from at least exploring it. But that's kind of what you have for experience. What do you think the skills are?
I think I would start with the skill of listening. That a lot of public officials like to hear them speak rather than listen. And when I was a young brass selectman, a school committee member, I had all the answers too. And as I aged, I realized I didn't have all the answers, okay? So I think listening is an important skill. When I came on the board, it was just about the time that we had them covered by cable TV. Before
Yep.
that, there were a handful of people in the audience, and the public just read about us or heard about it anecdotally. Now it's covered. So I think that if you start off with a love for the town, you don't have to be born here, you don't have to be a townie. I moved here and ran for office a couple of years later, and I got to meet people and be like Sam and you and other people in town that I have respect for. I think listening is an important skill. And if it doesn't come to you naturally, then I think that you have to strive to put that first, because we have a lot of bright people in this town. Mr. Shader, who heads the Finance Committee now, is a very bright, capable fellow, and you can learn a lot by listening to other people in town and then use your judgment to make the decisions that you have to. And some of them are difficult.
I agree with you. Listening is key. What's another one?
I think you have to be a good communicator. I mean, you have to be able to understand the issues, take the time to really fully understand the issues to be able to make a decision, but also be able to communicate, be able to have a good conversation with those who are testifying in front of you and gathering information. But it's also a matter of being able to explain the issues that you're dealing with and why taking the course of action that you are and why that is in the best interest of the town. So communication obviously is, in my mind, very important.
Another point that I would add, Mary, is the willingness to just kind of take the plunge. A number of people who have not been politically active are fearful of running a political campaign and standing up on their feet and addressing people and building signs and hosting conferences and things of that nature, and intimidated by it. I think that you will find that if people who are not for whom that doesn't come naturally, you'll find that you can recruit friends and other people that will help steer you. And then there are a number of people here, like myself, who have been involved in campaigns earlier in life, more than willing to lend expertise and support to people who are good candidates and would advance the town's interest.
During the election and while in office as well.
Yep.
So it's not like you're on your own. And you do have two other members of the board, but you know, you're going to want your own sort of consultants, neighborhood resident consultants that can help you as well. And you know, and it's not good, frankly, for the town not to have competition for the position. I mean, it's
I agree.
one of the most important positions in town. It's a position that, you know, you can really make a difference in the town, and
For better or worse.
yeah, but it should be, I would hope, you know, an attractive position for somebody who has confidence and wants to make a difference.
I think there's another skill, and that's the ability to be able to facilitate or to mediate or to be willing not to just be a hothead about things. There's nothing that dispels a conversation, that just sends people flying in different directions more than somebody who's irritable, somebody who's just shutting the door to whatever it is that is in front of them. I find that it really bothers me when I see elected officials at any level, but especially at a town level, talking to neighbors in a rather demeaning way at a meeting, and you know, making it sound like what they're asking for is the moon and the stars and stuff, and perhaps it's not. Maybe it is. It even is. It doesn't matter. They're sitting there and they're trying to communicate, and you have to have the patience to listen to it. So.
Mary, another good starting point is town meeting, too. For people who are not inclined to run for an office or volunteer, town meeting is 2 or 3 nights a year. 2 or 3 hours, roughly 3 hours a night. We get barely, sometimes 100 people there for a town this size. People in town who have not attended town meeting would find it very informative, dull at times, insightful at times, but always useful. And if somebody is thinking about running for office, they should at a minimum be attending town meeting and periodically attending selectmen's meetings so they can get a feel for the dynamic and not just watching it on TV.
Well, I would say they could, start by watching it on TV.
Yep.
I agree that sitting in the room is different. It's like when I was trying to help Bobby down at Holliston Reporter, I had to go to the meeting. I had to sit there because I have to catch the vibe. What's under there? But you make a really good point. Town meeting is, let's talk about what is the role of town meeting? Take it away.
Well, I mean, town meeting is the appropriating authority of the town. I mean, it's the body of citizens that come that make the decisions on policy issues, finance issues, and if you're not there, you're not going to be able to be part of the decision. I mean, it's the oldest form of government in terms of open town meeting, and
It's a true democracy.
At some point in time, we may need to look at that, but every vote is the same, and it makes the final decision. You don't always agree, but it's also important, that the Finance Committee has a thorough report that helps the citizens who come, explain what the issues are, and I frankly think more can be done with that. But it's as we said, the purest form of government in that it's that body that is going to make the decision. And sometimes you can be frustrated because we could spend an hour on a $3,000 issue and pass a $30 million budget in 5 minutes. And there may not be enough questions asked for these big issues particularly. So it can be frustrating in that sense. But it still is an opportunity for anybody who lives in the town that's registered voter to come in and have a say, ask questions, and vote on what they think is in the best interest of the town.
Do you think town meeting has gotten too scripted?
I used to serve as an elected town meeting member in Framingham, Mary, and we would spend maybe a full night and a half on the school department budget. And in Holliston, I've seen the budget pass with nary a question or nary a comment. And it's not discouraged. I personally think that we developed a culture, and I think it was in large measure because of the professional respect that people had for Paul LeBeau. That town meeting was well organized, the information was presented, it was presented in a concise, understandable fashion. You didn't have reports here in Holliston where we found $200,000, I had a big deficit, other things like that. And I think that members of the public here became somewhat lackadaisical in their obligation to scrutinize the municipal budget because they had confidence in him. So it may appear a bit scripted, but there's always the opportunity for individuals to step forward and advance an issue that concerns them. And I'm reminded, Sam, about the part-time or the full-time drama teacher at the high school that took up a lengthy debate, and that's not uncommon in other towns.
Right.
And be mindful that also the town meeting, in addition to appropriating money, is the entity that changes our zoning bylaw, makes additions to planning issues around town, affects land use in many different respects, and it's a good spot for citizens who want to become interested and informed to kind of get into the mix of things and get up and talk and advocate and challenge from time to time. But it does appear a bit scripted, but there's always the opportunity to advance an issue.
I mean, there's been a couple of times where I've gotten up and asked a question just so a question would be asked.
Yeah.
Right.
So there really needs to be more questions from the members or who attend to make sure they fully understand the issue before it's approved. I mean, that may make it longer, but I think part of the problem with this town is that they're used to one and done. I mean, one day and they're done. In other towns, it's 2 or 3 or 4 days because they take more time reviewing the issues and asking the questions, and that can be helpful in terms of it really working well.
Yeah, but again, that's why I think it's gotten a little too scripted so that the officials almost feel defensive when somebody starts to push back and say, but why? Or how did you reach that conclusion?
Yep.
And I think that's unfortunate. All of it changed after Prop 2.5. Certainly when the money went away,
Right.
and it became less of a focus. Back in the 70s, it was the Wild West.
Right.
It was the Wild West. You know, every single dollar was up for grabs, and we all grabbed. You know? And to some degree, it was a lot more fun. You know, but by the same token, you know, now you have Prop 2.5, and there are certain limits and so forth. But because I believe firmly that town meeting needs to regard itself as being the decision makers, okay, that dictate to all of these departments what it is we're looking for or how we should proceed in terms of, you may have brought me a suggestion, a request. Town doesn't like that. No, sorry, okay? Or maybe yes, we do. But I think that people need to understand how really important it is and how serious it is. And it isn't just up to the Board of Selectmen or any of these other boards to make those decisions. And so you can't, when you sit, it drives me crazy, maybe, I read Facebook once a day. That's about all I can tolerate anymore. It used to be, to a problem, it's like, no. But the numbers of times that we hear the they, okay, who are they? Well, they are your next door neighbors, probably, and you know what I mean? They are all people who live in this town, pay taxes, literally rub shoulders with you, travel the same roads with you, go to the same stores with you. Literally, your kids are side by side. It's not a they, it's an us. It
Right.
really is an us. And that's the part that really drives me nuts. But let's talk about the Finance Committee for a minute. Don't you have to really like finance to be able to serve on that committee? That's one I got to tell you, I would never have. You wouldn't want me to anyway. It's not in the best interest of the town. But come on, you guys.
Yes, but the way it's structured now, as an elected committee, you can't guarantee that. I mean, 75% of the finance committees in this state are appointed, and generally it's by the moderator and sometimes moderator and the chairman of the selectmen, to make sure that there's a diversity of experience, because the FinCom is dealing with all issues that end up being financial, and so you need that. I mean, when I was on the finance committee, there were 7 members, but there were like 4 members who were from the same company, same experience. So I think that's a problem. But I mean, yeah, finance, because you're the one that, I mean, in terms of writing the report, that's making the recommendations based on, the request of all the various boards, towns, and departments, and you've got to make the decision as to how it all fits within the dollars that are available. And so it's a matter of, meeting after meeting with the selectmen, with the leaders or the chairs of the various boards and commissions, and that includes, and then the school committee as well, and trying to balance it all out with what you estimate are the dollars available and how you're going to allocate the funds. So it's fascinating in terms of fully understanding how town government works, and the priorities that are made in terms of where the dollars go. But it's a lot of work.
That one's tough. That one's tough. What about the planning board?
The planning board has been active in advocating articles for town meetings consideration with respect to master plan issues and various parcels of property within town that either fit or don't fit into the course of development. The planning board is required to weigh in with a recommendation with respect to any zoning article that comes before town meeting. The zoning articles require a 2/3 affirmative vote to pass, and they play an important function in land use in deciding whether or not Holliston, as it presently exists, is properly zoned. Are we available to respond to changing economic circumstances and conditions? The legalization of marijuana presented issues about whether it's going to be sold retail, whether it's going to be cultivated, how that's going to interplay with neighborhoods and things of that nature. So the planning board is a good training ground. It also puts the members in contact with developers and the push and pull, and the zoning enforcement officer, who's the building inspector, and our planning director, Karen Sherman, and it's an interesting position for people that tend into that area. Just to supplement what Sam was saying too, in the Finance Committee, you also learn about what the town's sources of income are, and the interplay between the local tax dollars that we raise and spend, the monies that we receive from the state, grants that we receive, and things of that nature. So it's a good training ground. I think it takes a particular type of person to stay on there for multiple terms, but if you can go on for a term and learn that aspect of it, as I did when I was on the school committee, I learned and presented that time. The school committee chairman was expected to present the budget at town meeting and to the FinCom, and I got a good background in that. Not that you have to be a school committee member, but I think if you're involved in some project where you become exposed to other town officials and learn the process, then you're in a better position to contribute.
I mean, yeah, with the FinCom, you need to really understand, and you get the education of the responsibilities of every board, commission, department, and so really understand how town government works. On the planning board, I mean, that's an extremely important board. I mean, it really determines the quality of life in the town in terms of its decisions on zoning and development. And it also requires, I think, people with the right experience to be able to serve on. I mean, anybody can run. I mean, there have been times where we've had college students who really didn't have the background and ran and they won. And I'm not sure that's in the best interest of the town, but that's our democratic system. So but because of its importance, it's also important to recruit and encourage, those who have the right experience or have experience in development or zoning in some ways, or just land use to run and serve.
One of the things that always fascinates me about the planning board is issues like smart growth, walkable cities, improving sidewalks and making communities far more cohesive in their centers and that kind of stuff. That all follows under their responsibilities.
Yes.
But it takes a certain spark plug on the committee, any committee, to kind of move us or any town into a new direction or into a new thinking. And we've done some of that, and we're certainly seeing some glimmers right now. The walkable cities stuff is coming around. I think that's important. But what planning doesn't do is talk about sort of that overarching plan for Holliston besides the land use that isn't grounded in the land, no pun intended. So where does that kind of planning come?
Well, actually, having served on the Community Preservation Committee, and planning is important to that. I mean, we had when I was on the committee, we had been willing to fund planning projects, so that the planning department, because they didn't have the resources,
right, and
that it really could have. It's part of land use, and that's what the CPA is about. That it could help with the planning effort. We did support a housing study, a master housing study, and land use planning could be part of that to supplement what Karen is able to do with very limited resources.
Yeah, boy, if they have been a financially strapped department from the get-go. They have never been really well funded, right. And I think that's unfortunate because we pay the price. You don't see it in the short run. You see it in the long run. And I don't know if you've noticed in driving around town, of course, I'm here all the time. You guys are still, schlepping to some other community to work. But around here, every little parcel, I mean, go along Hollis Street, go along Norfolk Street, places where you've just had woods for as long as you can remember. Right. You now got houses going up and stuff. Right. And you've got a lot of infill, and I'm not opposed to infill, as long as there's a measured... as long as somebody's paying attention to how it all comes together. So in terms of the kinds of things that planning talks about, isn't a lot of it subdivision control?
It is. Mm-hmm. I think the bulk of it is.
Do we have that many subdivisions now? I mean, are there really that many? They're not like they used to be.
Well, within the past 10 years, we've had plenty of them that have come through and been developed, some under 40B and some just private development. But it's busy, and they're constantly dealing with waivers and requests for waivers and things of that nature. And I might add, in my own view, the Board of Selectmen, when they function well, serves as the focal point for the town as far as advancing what the town's vision is and working with the planning board and working with the housing authority and the housing trust to kind of set a tone as to whether this town is going to be one that's going to encourage the development of every little parcel or whether they're going to seek to preserve it as they can. I think we've had a good balance in this town, but I think the Board of Selectmen set the tone.
No, I agree. I think that they can set the tone. I don't think they always do, and I don't think that there's anything in their charter pretty much that says, you know, you got to do this. But
Right.
I would like to think that they are the visionaries and that they would come to town meeting with those ideas, and that they would even kind of broaden beyond using, you know, have a meeting that's just to discuss not your regular business, but just to discuss town growth or what are the issues you see in your neighborhood. We've had a lot of conversation about the traffic lights in town.
Yeah.
You guys are aware, right?
Yes,
We
yes,
have new
yes.
traffic lights downtown. You seen them?
Yes, yes, long time coming.
Stay away from
Right.
them.
Yeah, it took me a long time to get here tonight from my end of town.
Yeah.
But anyway, the lights certainly created some sort of trickle-down effect to the immediate downtown
Sure.
neighborhood, okay? And it's not just Mudville, which is part of it, but it's the other side streets up along Church Street and Elm and so forth. If you listen to those folks, you understand what the issue is, but it's not just there where people are talking about speed. I live on Roy Ave. It's the gateway to Queens. There are how many hundreds of houses are there in Queens, you
Yep.
know? And that road, people fly down that street like they think it's a highway. You know, there's nobody in the way,
Right.
admittedly, but, you know, they fly down that street. So when you're talking about some of these issues in one neighborhood, they're applicable to another neighborhood, even if that neighborhood's not at the table at the time.
We might add also one of the board's responsibilities are traffic regulations and determining whether streets are one-way or not one-way and restricting things of that nature. So as they vote, as a Board of Selectmen votes and town meeting votes to install lights, the unintended consequences of the effect on side streets and neighborhood then becomes the responsibility of the next Board of Selectmen to decide how we're going to address that and whether we're going to restrict traffic in a way to minimize the impact on other neighbors.
Well, some folks did bring those issues up before the lights went in, but okay. No, we'll let that slide because it's
All
a
right.
day late and a dollar short.
No, the selectmen also have the ability, if they see an issue that needs to be addressed, to create a committee
Absolutely.
to review it, come back with recommendations that they can then go to town meeting with. You know, the two government study committees that I was a part of, that was a creation of the Board of Selectmen, and it did result in changes in the governance structure.
One of the biggest things that has changed as far as traffic enforcement is that now we can set our own speed limits. We don't have to go through the
Right.
whole
Yeah.
big state
Right.
process anymore. And that, of course, has come up during that whole Mudville discussion. But I think you'll probably see more of that happening, you know, if Roy Ave, South Street was one that we always wanted to slow people down, and we couldn't, you know, we just couldn't. So at any rate, so when we talk about government structure, you want to put in a plug? Do you have thoughts about government structure these days? Or do you think he has thoughts about government structure, Bill? Do you think we've...
Well, I would say maybe back when I was on the Board of Selectmen, I voted to create a town government study committee, and Sam was a member of that resulted in the creation of the town administrator position that we have now. I did hear in his introductory comments he thinks it may be time for us to go in another direction, but I would never speak for Sam Tyler
No,
because
it's
I
just
would
that
learn
there's
from
some
him.
unfinished business.
Some unfinished business. And I think one of them was the Finance Committee, that
Yeah.
the Finance Committee
Yeah.
should be appointed.
Sure.
I was here when the treasurer was an elected position.
That was
with
our
Betty
first
Buston,
recommendation.
Yeah.
And-
Treasurer and
the accountant,
the
or
accountant.
auditor.
Yeah, both
Audit.
are now appointed by the
Yeah.
town administrator, so they're
Right.
part of a financial team.
Right.
The professional assessor is not part of that team and needs to be, so that's another piece of the unfinished business.
That would be me.
There you go.
That would be me. Oh, I tell you, I'm not the professional in there by a long shot. You want to talk about a tough committee to understand. I mean, most of these, you know, I don't know, maybe I couldn't wing the Finance Committee, but boy, this one's hard to wing.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, that one's hard to wing. They've got a litany of alphabet soup in there that just is unbelievable to me, and I've been on it now 2 years. But at any rate, what are the other things? I understand the Finance Committee one. We've talked about that in the past. You mentioned tonight, you can't be sure what you're getting when
Right.
you do it as an elective position. There's a lot of pushback against that, though. People don't want to give up their right to elect somebody.
I got it. I got it.
Yeah, but it's the issue that if you're appointed by somebody, they have the idea you'll be beholden to that person and you won't really use your own judgment,
Oh,
which makes
you
no
think that's
sense
the
at all.
case?
Again, 75% of the town moderators in this state are appointed and have appointment authority themselves.
Yeah, we have an underutilized moderator position. There are towns in which the moderator is a pretty powerful position.
Yeah,
Ours
there
is,
are.
it's just the...
Preside at town meeting.
Present at town meeting. But,
And I think maybe a fair point could be made that municipal finance and the set of laws under which cities and towns operate have become so complex
Yep.
that the day of somebody just stepping forward and willing to volunteer for that puts the town at risk of having an ill-prepared FinCom, an ill-prepared board. And I think that balancing the desire of the public to vote and select against expertise, I think at this stage in life, I come down on the side with Sam that we're better served by having people whose credentials are evaluated by the appointing authority, selected and appointed.
no, I agree when it comes to the Finance Committee. I think that should be an appointed board, and for most of the reasons that you've already stated. I would say that in addition to the fact that it's a very complex kind of thing, you're only as good as the person who's sitting to your left or right who's training you.
Yeah.
And if you have a year when you get 2 or 3 or somebody retires in midstream or whatever, and very recently we had 3 or 4
we were down.
new people.
We were down for a period of time.
All at one time. And you're talking about trying to train, get all these people up to speed. That's really, really hard. And it's kind of a dangerous committee on which to do that, you know, to have that kind of responsibility.
I don't think you'd entrust your own private business to a board of directors that was that ill-prepared to direct
True.
the business of the company.
True.
But it's also true in terms of, I mean, as Bill said, government is much more complex now. And
Yes, it
so it's those professionals who are appointed also need to be top-notch to be able to do their job. I mean, it's over a, $60 million budget.
I know.
So-
I know. And when you think about it from that standpoint, you're right. Would you just, you know, you wouldn't give it to me. I mean, you would not want me on that board.
Well,
No question.
No, on the Board of Assessors, you want the 3 individuals who are going to make the decisions.
Oh, boy.
But you know, the professional needs to be part of the financial team.
Right. I know that. I hear you. So that's one of your things, is to try to get the professional assessor to be part of the financial team and sort of out from, if you will, under, would the board remain elected?
Yeah, it could remain elected and do the job that it does, which is, you know, the abatement application review, making decisions there.
And the assessing function to fairly and
Oh,
accurately
boy,
assess the
last year we
value.
went out and assessed condos. I mean, now there was an experience, you know, going through condos and trying to evaluate, you know, how they change and that kind of stuff. I mean, as I say, this is another world as far as I was concerned. I mean, I'm catching on,
Yeah.
but that one's not easy. God bless Peter Barberi, who's been on there for a long, long time.
Yeah.
I don't know quite what we'd do without him.
They've had good consistency on that
Yeah,
board.
Yeah.
So what else besides the Finance Committee would you change?
I think I'd look at the bylaws. I don't know that there's anything, you know, in terms of all these different boards and committees, whether there's a way to consolidate or bring some of that under, you know, the town administrator. So it's and then there's just the open town meeting. Is
You
this
thinking
still
representative
viable?
town meeting, or are you thinking it's?
Yeah, it would, I know we're what, 15,000 population or so. We're not big enough for, you know, mayor council form of government, but it could take the next step of representative, and with the expectation that you're going to spend time at town meeting dealing with these issues. And, you know, everybody is so busy nowadays, which is why it's hard to get a large number of people to come to town meeting.
Yeah.
This would be, you know, one way to address that. You've got a core group of people who represent areas of the town, and
So how many people would that be? I mean, would it be more people than we have now at 100?
oh, I wouldn't think
No,
so.
I think it'd probably be less.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it should be manageable.
The other move, Sam, might be some towns have gone to 5-member boards of selectmen. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we looked at that at our last government study committee and looked at the experience of town boards with 5 and 3 and discovered that we thought 3 was better because with 5 you could have a little click, and that didn't work well. I think at the time we were looking at Hopkinton that it was not functioning well.
When I worked for the state and I would go to other communities to mediate, invariably 5-member boards were the more likely to have conflict, because you may have one odd person out kind of thing in a 2-to-1 situation. You get him or her an ally. Now you got a buddy. And now the buddy, they're really a little more intractable.
Yeah.
And then it is like banging heads.
You know, Mary, each town develops its own culture.
Yep.
As a result of individuals, history, just how issues or conflict are resolved. And I think one of the most charming things about Holliston and its municipal government is that we have traditionally agreed most of the time, but when we haven't agreed, not you and I, but just as a
Everybody,
town,
collectively, yep.
it's been resolved in a civilized fashion. We don't
agree.
have boards that sue each other. We don't have police officers called in to maintain order, et cetera.
I know.
We don't have resignations en masse over things.
Yeah.
We have a nice group of people that live here, and it's a nice group of people that serve in public government.
I agree, and I think that's one of the messages to anybody that is even thinking about running for public office, that it is not a hostile environment. If you look at what you see in the national picture, and maybe even sometimes at the state picture, but certainly it's not like that. And partly, I think that's because we're not partisan. That is, we're not running as Republicans and Democrats or anything. It's just all off the table. And so now you're just coming as, Bill or Sam or Mary, and you're just bringing your thoughts to the table. I think that helps a lot. But I agree that we have, over the years, and it's been forever, I mean, it has been forever, that we haven't had those embarrassing situations that used to be all over the front page of the newspapers with neighboring towns and stuff, that they would have these temper tantrums and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I maintain it's the water. It's the one continuum that we've had all this time, and our water is just better or something.
There you go.
So what would be your parting message to anybody who might think about running for office? I mean, they have to get 50 signatures. It's not a hard thing to do. You can stand down in front of Fisk's on a Saturday morning, a Sunday morning in front of Super Ed or whatever, and you can collect 50 signatures in a heartbeat. Of course, you can always get your friends and neighbors to help. You can make a party out of it. But the point is, what would you say to encourage folks?
I would say that in my own experience, I moved to Holliston. I didn't know anybody here. I moved here because the charm drew me. I grew up in Framingham, and I was an elected town meeting member there. I came here. I ran for school committee, foolishly, against a very popular incumbent. Ken Rowe was a wonderful fellow, and I became very close to him on the commission. And I was defeated and licked my wounds and just picked myself up and advanced after that. So if you run and lose, your life will go on. I think you will find it a very interesting opportunity to make an impact on other people in town. After that, I ran and served on the school committee and had a wonderful time with that, made lifelong friendships and contributed as best I could to the educational system here in town, then Board of Selectmen, et cetera. So I think that anybody who's thinking about it should do it and do their best, and I think it'll work out fine, win, lose, or draw.
Yeah, I agree. Sam?
I would say, you're a resident of Holliston. You have a vested interest that the town works well. It's a great opportunity to contribute, to give back, to provide your skills, to address whatever your interest is. There's plenty of opportunities, and you can make a difference, and you get to meet wonderful people who are also serving and work collaboratively together. And there needs to be more of a culture of volunteerism. I mean, this is a town structure that depends on volunteers to be able to serve and perform the duties that are necessary in the town. We don't have a mayor who, and a city council that makes all the decisions. Those who run have an opportunity to serve and to make a difference. And it's extremely important for the town that good people with experience and interest do that.
And I'm going to put in a plug for women. It's been 20 years since I left the board, 1999, and that's it. We haven't had another woman since then. Prior to that, Carol Dooling served in the 80s along with you on one of your terms, or at least maybe 2 years. And then prior to that, Jenny McGee and I served together in the mid-'80s. Think of that. Majority of the board was women. That was poor Mark Lippett sitting there, the rose between two thorns, he would tell us every meeting. But at any rate, God bless the man.
Right.
Seriously, women really need to think about this. It is a great experience. I could wax poetic about this, but I won't. I think serving in town government was probably the best education I've gotten in terms of a million different things that I've learned that are from an education academic kind of thinking, but also just the ins and outs and negotiating with people, and it's really great, and it's actually fun, believe it or not. It's still work. It's still work, and I'd be lying if I said otherwise. But I think anybody that is interested, all of us would be available if you just want to give us a call to just, what does it take? Could I do it? That kind of thing. If you're nervous and you need somebody to encourage you, please feel free. We'd be interested in helping you. Any parting thoughts? Anything we didn't cover? What are your notes, by the way?
Oh, just notes.
Okay. Did you get to do everything you wanted to?
Yeah, it's just if I needed them, I had them.
Okay, that's good.
I don't have it all in my head like Bill does.
The most organized person I know.
Always prepared.
Oh
There's
my
many
gosh.
strengths. Preparation is right
Oh my
at the
gosh.
forefront.
Absolutely, absolutely. But anyway, thank you both very much. I appreciate your coming on, really. Okay, and thanks and good night, and I hope you'll consider running for town office. Thanks.